Daniel 3. Daniel chapter 3, we'll read the chapter. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it upon the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent together the princes, the governors, and the captains, and the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and the rulers, the princes, to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together under the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then an herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, and the people, the nations, the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore at that certain time Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up." Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury. The form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, their hats, their other garments, and were cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound in the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come forth, come hither. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth in the midst of the fire, and the princes, governors, captains, the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their heads singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of the fire passed on them. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants, trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship God, any God, except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, language, which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, shall be cut in pieces, their houses be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. sure everyone here is familiar with this story, one of my favorites, for sure. We see at the beginning Nebuchadnezzar, obviously he's conquered the Jews and many other lands. They have surplus of gold apparently, and makes a 90-foot tall statue of gold by approximately 9 feet deep. And commands that when all the excess of music, of course he loves listing how all the types of music that he has to, again, from his wealth. Pretty proud of himself here, and that's what he was doing, was just showing off. That everyone should bow and worship, just fall down on the ground and worship his image. So we see that at this point, that verse 15, you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, all kinds of music to worship. And see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they pull out their swords, they slay all the musicians, topple the statue. No, they just stood. They stood, they didn't fall. Simply standing, though, was noticed pretty quickly by obviously jealous men that these foreigners had come in and had been promoted pretty high, obviously by the grace of God. And I'm sure they knew that Shadrach, they weren't going to worship, so they were probably standing there. And as soon as that music played, off they went to tell Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar, apparently, he seemed to like them, but his pride was getting a little hurt here too. So he said, all right, I'm going to give you another shot to do it, but, of course, they would not. And just quietly standing, not bowing the knee, may have consequences and require further action, as it did for these men. So in verse 14 through 18, we see they speak with Nebuchadnezzar, and one of my favorite parts of this is where they answer him and say, we are not careful to answer thee in this manner. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods or worship the image which thou set up. Basically, look, we're not going to mince words here. If our God chooses, he will not only save us from your little furnace here, but also from your very hand. And not just know we're not worshiping your image either way. Of course, this infuriated Nebuchadnezzar. As we read the rest, he binds them extra tight, gets his most fierce warriors to tie him up, heat the furnace extra hot. He was going to show them. The main point of this devotion, I suppose, though, is that often, at least me, I really enjoy the part where he tells off, where they tell off the king, basically, like, hey, we're not going to mince words with you here, but this is how it is. But to get to that point, they had to stand and make sure we examine ourselves, that we have the spirituality, to stand instead of to bow and worship. We imagine the highlight reel footage of us giving one of our government leaders an earful, yet, we're not going to be given that platform if we can't simply just stand when we're told to worship. So that's the devotion for this morning. It was a blessing to me.